hello, builders of good. Thank you for tuning in to the Build Good Fundraising podcast. Fundraising isn't easy, but it should be simple. So, on this show, we take the mystery out of raising money. Now, in every episode, we coach you to build your fundraising like a flywheel. The flywheel has 5 parts. Number 1 is listening to donors. Number 2 is engaging them. Number 3 is asking the right people for the right things. Number 4 is celebrating every gift. And number 5 is reporting back in a real-time and responsive way. If you master the 5 parts of the flywheel, your fundraising flywheel will start to spin reliably. With less effort on your part, your revenue will grow, and so will your career as a fundraiser. Now, every week, we focus on one part of the flywheel, and today, we're focusing on celebrating. Specifically, we're focusing on celebrating new donors, wonderful humans who made a first-time gift to your organization that we should be thanking and celebrating and welcoming to the fold, welcoming them into the community. We are talking to Nathan Hill from NextAfter. So here's my chat with Nathan Hill. Hey, Nathan, how are you?
Hey, Mike, I'm doing great. Please don't ask me to quote all 5 parts of the flywheel, but I do have it pinned on my backpack at this point, so I'm trying to commit it to memory, so it comes with me wherever I go. Got my sticker in front of me, so I'm prepared.
All right.
But I don't have it committed to memory yet, so I'll keep working on it.
Well, we're going to talk about new donor retention and celebrating new donors. But before we do, you and I just hung out at NextAfter's NEO Summit, the Nonprofit Innovation and Optimization Summit. We got to play a bit of a mind card game on digital fundraising. You got to quiz Hannah on our team and myself. And coming off of the heels of NEO, we just launched the Build Good Summit. So the Build Good Summit is our way of inviting ambitious nonprofits into a room to spend 2 days together and learn from each other. It's happening May 22nd to the 23rd in Toronto. Nathan, you might not know this. Canada does not have a lot of great fundraising conferences. We have 2 choices. One is spend a bunch of money and go down south to the NEO Summit and other great conferences happening in the US. Or number 2 is kind of miss out altogether and experience FOMO. You've solved for that by live streaming the NEO Summit, so we all get to take part of that wherever we are. But we're trying to get people in a room, and you are part of it. You're going to be coming to the Build Good Summit. So
yeah, I'm thrilled to be able to join you for it. The inaugural, right? It's first year for it.
It is the first year we're doing it this way. We did a bit of a proof of concept last year. We got 100 people in a room, got a bunch of feedback, got our feet wet at running an event, running a conference. It's not our core competency.
I'm not sure it's ours either, but we've learned as we've built it for sure. But yeah, no, I'm thrilled to be able to join you. I'm also excited just to see. I mean, as you have experienced, NEO Summit, our conference is pretty different compared to most other industry events, and that's slowly changing. I'd like to think we've had an impact on just how other people are thinking about how do you go build like a good learning environment. But I'm excited to see that continue to grow and expand. I think we were like-minded in a lot of ways about how we approach just fundraising in general, marketing broadly speaking, just learning and how people learn together and grow. So anyway, I'm thrilled to be part of the summit this year.
It was great to be at NEO as an optimization partner of yours. I don't think we've talked about it on the podcast before, but BuildGood is one of your premium optimization partners, which means a bunch of things. We're doing a bit of research together, and I'm sure in future podcasts we'll get into that. The part that have been the most public about is that people who join our fundraising academy also automatically join the NextAfter Institute, which I know that you have a big hand in creating and maintaining and growing and adding to that every year. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the Institute?
Sure. Yeah, the way that the Institute functions, I mean, it's really a collection of courses that we think can really empower the fundraiser and the marketer. And honestly, there's lots of training just even beyond those 2 core competencies to help you use proven tactics, proven strategies based on real world testing and experimentation that can actually lift your program and help you uncover more of what actually works to lead donors to say yes to giving. So we have a library at NextAfter of over, I think we just hit 7,300 online fundraising experiments. All of those represent a learning about what works to get someone to say yes to giving. And so all the training that you find in our institute is not just our opinion, not a gut feeling, intuition. It's based on concrete data that we've learned from A/B testing, paired with the actual tactical, practical implementation, because we work with organizations day in and day out where we're taking these learnings, applying them in things like year-end campaigns, which are coming up on that season, but everything from campaigns, high urgency campaigns, to email and donor acquisition, paid media. So we really, through the Institute, like to start sort of with the core competencies. There's really four things: donation page optimization, email optimization, A/B testing, and ultimately online donor acquisition. And there's a lot more to fundraising than just those four things. But from a digital perspective, there's so many core tools and skills built into those kind of four main courses that we think can really help you level up your digital growth and help you build more of a digital first program.
So if you join the Institute and you've joined the Academy, one thing that you'll get by being in both is that in the Academy, you have live Zoom coaching calls every single week where you've taken the course, you're optimizing your landing page. You can bring it to a Zoom call and our team will help you live optimize it right on the spot. And next week, you can bring it back and we can optimize it some more after you've had some traffic, after you've done a bit of learning. And I think it's a great pairing. If you're a shop in the Academy, if you're a smaller or medium-sized shop and you're doing a lot of things in-house, you feel like your fundraisers could use a bit of extra support, level up their fundraising game a little bit, and frankly, you don't have the budget to just go hire a bunch more people. I think this is a great option for you to consider. Now, today, as we have launched a summit and you're one of the speakers, we're going to talk a little bit about donor retention. And speaking of research that you share in the Institute, you've done research with Virtuous on donor retention. You've looked at a whole bunch of actual data. So you actually see the back end of somebody's CRM. So you see what is working and what isn't. You see actual results. It's not just an audit on the front end. It's a true analysis. And you've come up with a bunch of insights of what is working and not working in donor retention. So let's just start here. Let's quickly talk about donor retention, and then we'll go into three key things that anyone can do to boost donor retention immediately. Hey, we'll be back in 1 minute, but I wanted to tell you about today's sponsor, Build Good's Fundraising Academy. And I'm here with Caitlin. Caitlin runs the Fundraising Academy. What is the Fundraising Academy?
The Academy is a community of fundraisers who get it. They're in it, just like you are. And not only is it a community, it's our Build Good team helping your team get your fundraising flywheel spinning, just like we talk about on the podcast all the time.
What does that mean?
Well, we take everything we've learned from years of working with clients and we help you put that into practice with your own donors. Everything's online, so anytime you have a question, you can post it, and our team, as well as other amazing fundraisers, will answer it for you. Weekly, we have multiple calls where you can get feedback directly in real time on your campaigns. For example, you could bring an appeal you're working on and we'll help you make it stronger. And if you have a question about your fundraising, you can come every single week and we'll walk you through those questions and coach you to your best answers. If you want to learn more, you can go to www.buildgood.com/academy.
Donor retention. We all know it kind of matters, but what's the real business case here to improving donor retention?
Yeah, it definitely kind of matters. Maybe more so than kind of matters. We were just chatting even before we started here, just about how nuanced this metric can be and sometimes deceiving it can be. Like you could have a really high donor retention rate and not be in a great place in terms of your overall program. If you have a handful of really committed donors who give to you year after year, that's awesome. But does that mean you're growing? Probably not if you're only stuck with the same, 50 to 100 donors. You could have really low retention rates, but that might be because you're investing really heavily on the acquisition side and maybe have yet to see the returns on like leading those people into second gift or second year giving, third year giving, and beyond. So it's not like the one kind of primary measurement for the health of the organization, but it's a really, really critical metric because if you can move the needle on retention, even in small ways, it lifts it lifts your entire program. It makes all the dollars that you go spend on acquisition look all that much better, because you can go spend more to go acquire a donor if you know that they have a much higher chance to become a key multi-year donor. Their lifetime value is going to be that much greater. Their 12-month value is that much greater. So you can do a lot more on the acquisition side if you can fix retention. And obviously, if you're fixing retention, you have greater confidence in those key multi-year donors to continue on giving in the future. You can figure out like new stewardship plans, new cultivation plans to lead them into mid, into major giving, and all that sort of stuff. So it's a really hard metric to, I think, understand what's impacting it. But if you can move it in a significant way, or even in a small way, but a measurable way, you can make really dramatic impact across the entire program. So that's why we have spent a lot of time trying to study how do you move the needle on retention.
Let's get into some key takeaways from this study. One of the most touted sort of ways to fix retention is monthly giving and recurring giving. And we just looked at almost 500,000 donor records just last month from 14 Canadian organizations. And organizations who have a child sponsorship program or a strong monthly giving program, which child sponsorship essentially is, it's just like night and day in terms of the health of the organization, the health of the financial outlook of the organization. So for sure, monthly giving can be a powerful tool. So if somebody is thinking, how can I improve retention? Is recurring giving like the natural place to start? Is it a little bit more nuanced than this?
Yeah, I do think there's nuance to it. I mean, that's one of the first things we looked at when we started down this road in this study. And just to like talk about it from a high level for a moment, with this study, what we did is we looked at 200 plus organizations. Virtuous, the CRM company, helped us kind of build the sample of organizations we were going to study, because we wanted to look not just at the front end experience of the donor, which is something we do all the time, trying to put ourselves in their shoes, understand what is it like to give a gift? What's it like to be onboarded? What's it like when year end comes around? How are you cultivated? How are you solicited? Trying to understand the donor experience, but then go sync that up with the actual performance data. And so that's what Virtuous was able to help us do, is look at the front end, but also see how are these different organizations we're looking at performing when it comes to online retention, offline retention, overall retention rates. And when you look at data in that way, it's hard to draw exact one-to-one correlations to say, ooh, this organization did this cool thing, and they've got really great retention performance. This must equal that. Like, it's messier than that. You're kind of looking for patterns in the data to generate new test ideas, but it gets us a lot closer than just purely looking for cool things that are happening in the donor experience. So all that said, where we started first was looking at some of the bigger pieces of data, looking at things like just revenue sizes of organization. Does that impact retention? Is it simply those that have more sophisticated programs and therefore have more retention? The answer is actually no. It's a much more of a mix. We looked at things like verticals. We looked at things like recurring giving, with the, I would say, assumption going in that we needed to challenge of, is recurring giving sort of like the one size fits all solution to magically improve retention rates? And there's certainly a lot of examples where you've got organizations that have significant recurring giving programs, a sizable percentage of their file gives on a monthly basis, where they have high retention. And as we go look in our own benchmarking with organizations we work with day in and day out, there's huge increases in retention when you move to a recurring giving relationship, upwards of 200+% increases in retention. But it's not the one size fits all approach that sometimes people sort of tout it to be. There's a lot of examples of organizations that have sizable percentages of their file giving on a recurring basis that actually have more like low to mid performing retention rates overall. That's often, as we've been trying to understand, like, what's sort of the narrative there? What's the kind of like unifying principle there? Why would that be possible with some organizations? It seems oftentimes that many organizations that have that like low retention rate, but maybe have a good amount of recurring donors, the approach of their fundraising or their messaging might be around like more current event type of stuff. This thing is happening right now, oftentimes falling in verticals around like public policy and advocacy type of stuff that often relates directly to legislation that's on the table, today or this week. or related to, disaster relief, things that are happening, right here, right now. There's a big earthquake. There's a big, massive event that happened. We need funds right now. You can get people to sign up, but it doesn't always lead to long-term retaining. And so the sweet spot seems to be this combination of, yes, building a recurring giving program, but combining that also with intentional like value proposition language where you're really trying to cast a vision for longer term impact, trying to align with the shared values that you have with your donors, cast a vision for what the world might look like in the future if we can partner on this thing together. And it makes a ton of sense that those two things really go hand in hand. Why would I sign up to give to you on a monthly basis if I don't believe that we together can go make an impact for the longer term? Yeah. So that was sort of the first takeaway, first kind of major realization. And to your point a moment ago about like, child sponsorship organizations, they often have tremendous recurring giving programs that have tremendous retention rates. Well, if you're signing up to go sponsor a child, I think of, because we've sponsored children through Compassion International, and you stick around for 16, 18 years because you're committed to the one person and to the one child that you're sponsoring. Yeah. That's an incredible like value proposition on the front end to get someone to stick around. Vision for the long term, where your money is going, who it's impacting. So those organizations are like uniquely positioned to have great recurring giving, great retention. The question then is, what can we learn from that and go apply to an organization that doesn't have child sponsorship as like the go-to reason to go give on a monthly basis? So that was one of the first major takeaways. It's not just recurring giving, it's paired with that kind of like longer term vision, longer term outlook.
Yeah, one of our axioms, one of our rules for fundraising is basically like retention starts at acquisition. And so when you're designing the acquisition experience, if you don't have the retention in mind, like don't even bother until you've got the retention figured out. And one thing we noticed, curious if you've seen this, is that the channel, the way that you've acquired a new monthly donor, oftentimes there's some correlation there to retention as well, even if you're doing all the right things. And this could be unique to the Canadian context, but it seems like what's often called face-to-face, which is door-to-door acquisition of monthly donors, that seems to have a pretty high or a higher drop-off rate in terms of monthly giving. Somebody signs up in the moment, later on cancels. Yeah. I don't know if they didn't have the heart to tell the door-to-door sort of fundraiser that they didn't want to sign up, so they sign up for it, but they later cancel. Telemarketing can have a bit of that same pattern, whereas other ways of acquisition, yeah.
The face-to-face thing is interesting to me. I mean, I'm a person who's wired to like, I don't like conflict. I've had to learn and grow in that area because conflict can be good and necessary, but at my core, like I want everybody to be friends and happy with each other and all of that. So like the idea of face to face having a conversation about giving, it's really hard to say no for some people like myself in that moment. Much easier than to go online a couple weeks later and cancel that thing and move on and feel like, yeah, I made a gift, I did okay. And much easier if you're, I mean, it speaks to if you're acquired in more of like an online channel, not in a face-to-face conversation. You have so much more to overcome through the landing page or through the email to convince someone to be on board because you're competing with every other distraction that's on someone's phone or on the screen in front of them. So you probably have that much more buy-in when they actually sign up. They probably actually want to do it. They're not just appeasing you to get off their porch or a recent experience to I'm just trying to get out of the grocery store. I don't want to have a whole conversation about this. My kids are here. We just got to get to the car. That's what I want to do. So.
All right. So that's takeaway number one, which is like recurring giving can contribute to very healthy retention. It can do wonders to your overall revenue and finances and financial outlook. It can certainly sometimes help you sleep better at night, knowing that there's a bit of a base of recurring support. Yeah. But it's not the end all be all. You actually need to think of the value proposition, steward your monthly donors well. Think of ways of continually delivering value. Everyone wants to get recurring donations. Very few people want to think about ways of providing recurring value. And that's just like hand in hand. If you want to do recurring giving well, you got to do recurring value well.
Yep.
Number two, you talked about a lot of organizations in your study. You talked about a lot of organizations aren't doing the bare minimum well when it comes to welcoming and celebrating a first-time giver and welcoming them into the community of givers. Can you talk a little bit about what you mean by that?
Yeah. I mean, whenever we start into one of these studies, we're putting ourselves in the shoes of the donor. We're making gifts. We're signing up for emails. We're looking at follow-on communication, all sorts of stuff. And our hope ultimately is, can we go find some like new and interesting tactics or tools or strategies, principles that we can go put to the test and see do they actually work? And the sad part about doing this type of research over and over and over is you kind of keep like hitting your head against the wall sometimes, because we just see that so many organizations aren't doing even the most basic of tactics. And we live in this world where we're always, at least in our sector, always talking about what's the next thing, what's the next new innovative tool, technique, strategy. And oftentimes, honestly, just hoping a tool can solve all of our problems. Yet when we go look at the data, we're not even using the tools to do the most basic things. So for example, one of these research studies we put out related to retention, we were looking at the new donor welcome series. So we've made all these gifts. We're looking at the first 90 days of communication, and lots of interesting things came out of that. We want to go look at, okay, what are all the different types of cultivation offers that people are using? What's the pathway that they're trying to lead someone to go give a second gift or to upgrade to monthly and things like that. But some shocking stats, I've got some numbers in front of me I'll share. Number one, 27% of organizations, so that's more than 1 in 4, didn't send a receipt within the first 7 days of giving. And giving online, these are online donations that we're making. There was no immediate receipt that was shared for 1 in 4 nonprofits. You've got 51% of organizations that didn't send a thank you within the first week, the first 7 days. And the world we live in expects immediate communication, especially when you interact in an online channel. So to wait 7 days to say thank you is like you've completely missed the opportunity to show your gratitude at that high point, high watermark of engagement with that new donor. You look at the broader like 90-day onboarding window, you've got a third of organizations that don't send any form of cultivation. And when we broke down this data, cultivation wasn't this like weird nuanced bucket that you got to meet these specific criteria. It was, the buckets were, did they ask for money in the email? Okay, that's a solicitation or an appeal. Did they not ask for money in the email? That's cultivation. It's a wide or really big bucket there. So 1/3 not sending any form of cultivation to a new donor, which is just shocking. Wouldn't we want them to be informed about where their gift is going, what type of impact it's making? And then beyond that, if we want people to actually retain, we have to lead them towards giving again. We have to make an ask at some point. We often see there's tons of activity of people becoming either a monthly donor, like upgrading from one time to monthly within their first 90 days, or choosing to give again. Over half of organizations didn't ask for a second gift or try to get someone to upgrade within the first 90 days. So these are all really basic things. None of these are like super innovative. Send a receipt, say thank you, send some form of like welcome email and cultivation, and maybe ask them to give again. Like this is not like going to blow anybody's mind in terms of a strategy, but the reality is so many of us aren't doing even this most essential stuff, even when every organization in the study has the tools, because Virtuous helped us build the sample of organizations. As a platform, Virtuous has all of these things baked in. They're super easy to turn on, and you can do a whole lot more, but they certainly have the essentials baked in. Yet many of these organizations just aren't doing what I would consider to be the bare minimum to just say thank you and welcome someone to this donor community. It's shocking, and it's kind of sad, but it shows there's so much opportunity to do a few little things that could actually move the needle on retention.
Right. Lastly, year end. A lot of organizations. So we've acquired some new donors. Many of us, not enough of us sent a tax receipt. Not nearly enough of us sent a thank you. Half of all of nonprofits in your study, they forgot like their mom's words when they were kids to always say please and thank you.
Right. We need more moms in fundraising.
Yeah. As an aside, when I'm looking for a good subject line for emails, I often search my inbox for like emails from mom, and I'm just looking like for her subject lines or
Because
like
then you know
friends
it's
or
like authentic and it's
uh
warm and it's genuine.
yeah, a lot of them end up being need some help, and then it's like, hey, can you help me figure this out on the computer? And
Have you used that subject line yet? Asking for IT support?
just yeah.
Oh,
Hey,
amazing.
I'm wondering, we're testing out a new donation form. Do you mind making a gift just to see if it comes through, if it works?
It's a secret hack to instant donations. I love it.
We need some
Right
test
about the
gifts.
year-end season.
Yeah, so lastly, we've got these new donors. We didn't thank them enough. We didn't cultivate them enough. However, year end is coming around, and this is kind of our chance to tap into a lot of natural generosity that seems to be out there during the season. And we don't have to get into whether we have created those expectations as fundraisers that now's the time to give, or whether we're just tapping into whatever it is. Year end, the data is super clear. Some of our clients see upwards of 50% of their revenue come in the last
Yeah.
6 weeks of the year, and then a lot of that is the last 2 weeks. So that is what it is. And philosophically, we may not love it, but it is our chance to lead a ton of people toward greater generosity.
Mhm.
So even if we didn't do a good job of welcoming them in, now's our chance to invite them toward greater generosity and make another gift. From your study, what are some of the big opportunities here that not enough of us are capitalizing on?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there's a lot to dive into that we could dive into. First, I mean, we believe like year end is the culmination of every good thing that you've done this year to cultivate and steward your donors. So if you haven't so much as reached out to any donors this year to say thank you, show them the work that you've been doing together to make an impact, I would start that now. That's probably the best thing that you can do to make sure that your campaign is successful. Is just get some cultivation out before the chaos of the year end and holiday season. Ideally, you're sending something once a week, a quick story of impact, sending someone a link to a video talking about the impact they're making. It might just be something like a testimonial you're sharing just directly in the inbox, but get that cultivation going as soon as you can. Beyond that, though, and again, this isn't like the most innovative strategy, but a primary strategy to get seen in the inbox and in the mailbox during the year end season is to communicate more. Shockingly, despite what you just said, like upwards of 50% of revenue at stake during this season. So we made all these new donations. This is in 2023. And then we're looking at the new donor onboarding series and cultivation, all that sort of stuff. And then we looked at what happened at year end. How did these organizations try to go reactivate us as a new donor during this high urgency season? 40% of organizations didn't send as much as an email to a new online donor that year to try to reactivate them. So I don't know if the methodology is just, oh, they already gave this year, they're new, we don't want to like over solicit, so we're just going to put them on a suppression
Mm.
list. I'm going to guess the reality is more just they didn't have a plan and they choose not to participate in year end via email. What's also interesting beyond that, 29% of organizations sent nothing at all. So we also looked at direct mail that was coming in. Some organizations chose to just communicate with the online donor in a direct mail channel. Not a lot, but some. It's an interesting tactic, interesting approach. 29% said nothing at all, neither email nor direct mail. So a primary strategy is number one, show up, do something, communicate with your donors, whether they already gave this year or not. They're likely willing to give again, especially if you have a compelling value proposition during the year-end season. Sending more than that is better, more than just once or twice, because it's really important in that season to remember that you're not just the lone organization that's communicating in the inbox or in the mailbox. You're also not just competing against other charities, nonprofits, and organizations. You're also competing against the entire infrastructure of just like e-commerce and retail and everyone who wants your attention every single waking moment of the holiday season for you to go buy a bunch of stuff. So you're competing with everybody for attention, at least during that time. So choosing to send more is a great strategy to make sure that you just have visibility in the inbox and give yourself a chance. Choosing to send even on like weekends, where sometimes weekends aren't the greatest for like conversion and getting the most people to give, but oftentimes we'll see higher average gifts coming in on a weekend because people have more time to sit down and contemplate, how much do I really want to give? It might be a great time to get some cultivation out, or send a testimonial, send a story of impact. That the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, is when you have kind of lower send volume during that year-end season. So you can take advantage of it just for the sake of getting some visibility as you kind of approach the high urgency deadline of the last week of the year. And then another thing to consider around that too is just is multi-channel and getting multi-channel touch points in. There's so many experiments at this point just proving the impact of multi-channel. If I think back to 4 or 5 years ago, lots of people are talking about multi-channel, but there's not a lot of concrete data to definitively say, okay, if you go add some meta advertising targeting your direct mail file, like that's probably a good thing, but does it really work? That stuff has been tested. We've tested a lot of that stuff for the past few years to really try and understand how do these channels work together. And effectively what we're learning is you can't really do too much. You've got to go manage your ad spend and all that stuff and try to get the best bang for your buck. But adding multi-channel touch points is a huge way to get some more, just visual recognition of your brand in the inbox, in the mailbox, sending a text message just to make sure that you're more visible to your donor. And as we look at like retention, we broke down all these organizations into 3 buckets. You've got like high performing retention organizations, mid performers, and low performers. The organizations that were most likely to send a multi-channel, use a multi-channel approach, guess what? They fall in like the high and the mid performing buckets. Low performing organizations in terms of retention typically don't use any form of like multi-channel approach or multi-channel strategy. So it's another way to make sure that you're visible. It's another way to get people to see the opportunity to give, maybe even in a channel they haven't given before, expose them to more cultivation, more opportunity to see the impact that they can have when they give. So if you're not planning to use a multi-channel approach with either your online or your offline donors, consider how you can cultivate your offline donors using email, and consider how you can activate your online donors, maybe by dropping a postcard in the mail to go thank them early on in the season, cultivate them in a new channel, and give them ways to actually give through a multi-channel touch point.
Yeah, that's great. We've seen the same multi-channel. It's so obvious, but so many people are still just kind of not doing it. And even when it comes to multi-channel, there's sometimes a bit of email is so much cheaper. So we'll only send mail to people who we don't have an email address on file. And at least from our data, we can tell you should be sending mail to as many people as you can. You'll get smarter over time who wants it and who doesn't want it. And those people will let you know, and you can look at the data, and you'll start to see who isn't responding and who is. But if you've got a mailing address on file, postcards are really cheap. They're a super low risk, cheap way of reaching somebody. Don't perform as well as a proper mailer, but if you want to test into an audience with something in the mail, a postcard is a good way to start.
We ran a test. This has been probably 5 years ago now, but we ran a test during year end where for one organization, we split their file in half, online and offline donors. Half of them got sort of the normal routine communication, which is a pretty decent communication plan, a mix of direct mail and emails and all that sort of stuff. The other half, they got one additional postcard that was purely like a thank you postcard sent around the Thanksgiving holiday in the US. And that's all it was. It was a thank you note, personalized, had their name on it. There was a link in the postcard to go watch a video from the president of the organization thanking the donor. And we went and we looked at the data at the end of the year-end season. People who got the postcard are 200% more likely to give because they were properly thanked, and oftentimes done so in a different channel than they're used to being communicated with, which maybe increased the feeling of like how grateful the organization was. They're seeing it in a new light. Those little touch points really matter. They're hard to measure, but they really matter. And if I can add one more, I mean, another experiment we saw just this past season, just sending an email appeal, adding on top of it a direct like text message that goes out to the same people that are receiving the email. 27% increase in donations from that email because you had this multi-channel sort of reminder. Oh yeah, I need to give to that. Oh, that's another way to see some pictures and some faces and get some value proposition language in. These things make a dramatic impact, and they're easier to do now than they ever have been.
Yeah. Another thing I'll add about postcards, depending on where in the world you live, you're going to be paying between 30 to 70 cents per postcard to reach somebody. If you know your numbers, you know that that can sometimes be even cheaper than reaching them with a meta ad. So don't sleep on postcards. Is one of the things we're we're learning here. Well, this is great, Nathan. So three key takeaways is one, recurring giving is a great place to start to have a healthier file, but it's not the end all and be all, and you need to really think about providing recurring value. Number two is the bare minimum. Are you thanking donors after their first gift? Are you giving them a tax receipt? Are you doing some cultivation? Are you asking for second gifts sometime within the first 90 days? And then lastly,
don't just assume you are because you wrote a strategy brief once. Go make sure that all the tools are working and sending out all the communications. I think that's the biggest fall off is just we set it up, we forget it, and then somehow it breaks, and then our donors are left to pay the price.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of forgotten copy out there that somebody wrote one time, put it on some sort of automation, or just put it in a brief, and it never goes anywhere. And then lastly, for your end, show up more than you think you should. Don't be shy. And just remember, a lot of other people are showing up too. So uh, you kind of can't do enough in the last 6 weeks of the year, with a special focus on the last few weeks. And that is why, if you're running the flywheel, you have earned the right to ask again, because you have celebrated people's generosity. You have reported back. You have listened to them by looking at their data and asking for their feedback. You've engaged them in different ways, and then you've earned the right to ask again. So don't be shy. Be bold. And worst thing that can happen, somebody decides it's not for them. It's not the right fit at this time. And don't be discouraged. Most fundraising is unsuccessful. I always have to remind people, if you look at really great response rates, let's say you're getting 50% response rates. You are killing it. That means half of the people are saying, nah, not for me right now.
A good reminder, Mike.
Yeah. And depending on the medium, like 20% is an amazing response rate. That means 80% of people are saying, yeah, not the right fit at this moment, in this moment of time. So don't get discouraged. Nathan, people want to find you. Where can they find you online?
Yeah, best place to find me, head to nextafter.com. We got tons of resources, especially around the year-end season. Go to nextafter.com/year-end. You should find all of our year-end resources if you want to dive in there. Also find me on LinkedIn. Search for Nathan Hill. I should come right up with a big face, like my hands up or doing something silly. That's me. That's how you know it's me. So shoot me a request on LinkedIn. We'd love to stay connected to you there as well.
All right. Well, thanks, Nathan, for hanging out with us today. That is all for us today. Here's my short action plan for you, and it's pretty simple. By the time we're recording this and releasing this, we're kind of on the eve of year-end fundraising season here. It's upon us. So the only thing I want you to do is I want you to, on a piece of paper, map out every single touch point that you have planned for the next few weeks. And if you're not sending an email at least once per week, add that in right now. Just add in an email that you can send once a week. Doesn't have to be fancy. Doesn't even have to be formatted. Might even be better if it's not. Probably better if you don't format it too much. Make it a personal email. You can focus on gratitude. You can focus on a novel piece of news a donor might not know yet. You can never go wrong with a spontaneous gratitude email. You can never go wrong with a very quick before and after story. We call it a 9-word email. You can do it in very few words. You can do a quick before and after bridge and just let donors know you're part of this. And I just wanted you to know because I just heard this and it's amazing. And you're an important part of the team. So you should be part of this. You should be hearing about this. Thank you. That's my action plan for you. As always, thank you for hanging out with us around the fundraising campfire. If you would like to come see Nathan and myself and other people other ambitious nonprofits and innovative fundraisers like yourself. If you want to be among your people, go to buildgoodsummit.com. There's only 350 seats available. We just launched it. There's actually only 339 seats available last time I checked. So go ahead and secure your spot. And we'd love to see you in person in Toronto, May 22 to 23 next year. If you're listening to this, you're my kind of people. I'm your kind of people. Thank you for the work you do. I'm your host, Mike Dirksen, cheering you on as you do good in the world.